Hi, this is the Securing Software Repos working group, right?
Yep.
Great. Just checking. Thanks. I think Zach said he's gonna be a few minutes late, so suppose let's give it a minute or two for people to come in, and then someone has to volunteer running the show for a while.
Hey, Tricia, how are you doing?
Hey, good. How are you, Laurie?
Good. I guess I need to get a picture on my default. It used to be there. I don't know what happened to it.
Zoom can be funky. You need to go to your profile and change it there.
Yeah. Maybe I'll do that as we're waiting.
Yeah. Yes, while we're waiting for Zach, guess I'll volunteer running the show a little bit until he arrives. Here's the meeting notes. Please put your attendance there, if you don't mind.
Oops, I guess I screwed up. Jumped in the same spaces.
That happens a lot.
Yeah. Ah.
Cool. So I guess we could get started instead of waiting a whole 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Just to make good use of everyone's time. So it looks like the agenda is, hi, I'm Trishang, by the way. I'm a staff security engineer at Datadog. The first thing on the agenda is intros, new friends. So if there are new people here, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
So I think I'm new to this. I'll turn my video on since I don't have a picture yet. I'm working on that. So Lori Williams, let's see, adjust my camera. I work at NC State University as a professor, work in the area of supply chain security with my PhD students. One of them is here, Nusrat Zahan, who's been working with lots of people. So I have PhD students who work in supply chain security. I also have a big NSF grant, $9 million on supply chain security that's multi-institutional. And I'm doing a sabbatical at Synopsys working in supply chain security. So it's kind of like living and breathing it all day long, probably like a lot of you.
Nice. Welcome. Excited to have you here.
Yeah, thanks.
Would your student like to introduce herself?
Nusrat, she's been here.
Yeah, I can go ahead. Hello, everyone. I have been in this for last couple of months, probably. I'm Nusrat. I'm a fourth-year PhD student, and my focused on software supply chain security, especially identification of security metrics that detect risk in software supply chain. And here I'm in this group to know about how the ecosystem maintainer or manager are working towards getting more data from different ecosystems, especially how can we get malicious data from different ecosystems. So I talked with Jack, and Jack invited me here.
Cool, nice, thanks. Sorry, I wasn't aware that you've been here before. And Miles has a shout out for you. Say it's nice to be on a call together. Love the research you did with the GitHub NPM team. And he very nicely linked to the paper there.
Yeah, and thanks, Miles. There's nothing that an academic advisor loves more than to read messages like that about her student.
Thank you so much. I was in Twitter today morning, and I looked at my some of the tweet, and I remember I should connect with him. Hey, Miles, nice to meet you here finally.
Yeah, you as well. It's you know, always fun seeing someone think that they discovered this, you know, like every 3 or 4 weeks. We get vulnerability reports pretty regularly, and people get pretty angry when we're like, yeah, like we're not going to do anything more than we've already done, and we're not going to talk about it extensively more than what we have on a website. But we're very aware of this attack because of this excellent research that was done, you know, like a year before people started trying to like en masse do this. And appreciate folks who are doing research in a way like you are, where you work with the companies instead of just, you know, hacking and then calling your research.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Hi, this is Arno. So I know some of you know me probably already, but I'm new to this group on that time frame actually, or time zone. I'm actually part of the open technology group at IBM. I've been acting in the open source, open standards arena for almost 30 years. And so I have actually been focusing on OpenSSF for about 1.5 years now. Generally speaking, I try to make this organization be successful in what it's trying to do. And I've been focusing on different groups here and there, trying to help them. As of late, I'm mostly active in the Salsa Spec work group, but you know, I'm always trying to attend other groups' calls to at least know what's going on.
Cool. Welcome, Arno. Nice to see you here.
Thank you.
Anyone else would like to introduce themselves, or should we move on? Ah, Zach's finally here. Okay, very good. Zach, would you like to take over?
Yes. I just heard, Zach, would you like to take over? So would appreciate a moment to get my bearings. Yeah, and apologies for the delay, everyone. I am without internet at home, so I'm currently outside. So I see we did intros. Cairo, did you cover the RSTUF, R stuff? I don't know what the canonical pronunciation is. Update or no?
Yeah. So yeah, we say our stuff or our stuff. We say like a joke. But yeah, for is new here, the our stuff is the for the repository service for TUF. This is an implementation of TUF as a service. TUF is a framework to secure repositories. So the updates that I have here is we open the pull request for the TAC. It's in draft there. Also, that's the update that I have for the work group. But also I would like to share that the progress for the roadmap, it's going very well. So probably end of this month we have the first beta, and also we'll submit a pull request to the warehouse, the PyPI, with the R stuff implementation. Then we can evaluate this together and together with the PyPI folks as well. That are my updates.
That's awesome. And I just want to chime in real quickly with a slightly administrative update. I went to the TAC meeting for the OpenSSF on Tuesday, as is kind of the recommended procedure for when you're getting a project adopted. They don't have to vote on it in a meeting, but just to give them a heads up, everyone basically said, looks good, keep on going with the pull request in that process. And once the legal stuff is sorted out, which we're working on, and I don't see any big roadblocks there, should be just a matter of getting a thumbs up from the TAC, and then it's an official project under this working group. So excited to see where that goes, both technically and bureaucratically. Thanks, Cairo.
Okay, thank you.
So I have a tentative item for me in Nusrat. Nusrat, can I turn it over to you and ask if you have any updates? And sorry to spring this on you.
Yeah, I can actually. So when Jack and I was talking, we were one of the things that we have identified, and probably we all know that we don't have any central repositories where we can collect different ecosystems data. And most of the research that we have seen in so far, it was based on NPM because it gives us a easy way to get the data, probably I would say. So if we want to extend supply chain research and even for industry, we need a way to, we need a platform where we can get different type of data for different ecosystems. And also, if possible, if we can host malicious package data historically, because it will also help from a research perspective. And that's why we are currently in the process of writing a proposal to have a central repositories and what type of data we should include on that central repositories and how we can incorporate different ecosystems to get the data. And I also proposed one of the research that currently I am doing, and I want to extend it for the different ecosystems. So if everyone wants, probably I can talk a little bit about this research, or else I can hand it over to Jack.
Yeah, I think that's a great summary. And then again, I, as usual, have the bureaucratic update, which is there seems to be a lot of hunger for such a resource across working groups. I've seen at least 3 different OpenSSF working groups ask for something like this. And this ranges from very narrow sort of wishes. So there's an open issue, I think, on PyPA. I'm not sure which repository exactly, but basically for Python to publish basically a feed of malware packages that they're taking down, just the metadata, so that can kind of turn into advisories from OpenSSF and other tools in case you're using one of those packages that has since been taken down. Like at what point do you notice that that has happened if you were unlucky enough to download something pre-takedown? So I think there's like a very narrow version of this question, especially as it pertains to malware. And then there's a very max.
Oops.
I think we lost him.
Yeah.
And as well, which
Zach, I think the tall buildings are impacting your cell service.
Oops, we disappeared. Oh, no.
Okay, sorry about that. I think I'm back now. Where did you lose me?
I think you talk about PyPA.
Okay, great. Yeah, so there's sort of demand for that very narrowly, but I think there's also general demand for a lot of interest in metadata about malware. There's interest in malware samples itself, and which ones you'd be using depends on who you are, if you're doing like malware research and so on. Miles?
Yeah, so a couple things that I wanted to mention. And first, for our malware takedowns that we're doing at NPM, those now directly connect to the GitHub advisory DB, creating malware advisories for each of them. Now, one thing, I have conflicting thoughts while I talk about this. One would be, it sounds like we should get the Python folks and our advisory database folks connected, both figuratively and literally, to see if we can have that stream piping to create malware advisories. But one of the things that we have noticed internally can be an issue, and I would be somewhat skeptical of hooking up more things to this automated system, and is false positives or any sort of malware that's like falsely identified. We had an incident recently, without getting into too many specifics, where a very reasonable updater tool looked like a dropper and resulted in setting off a whole bunch of malware tools that resulted in something being erroneously identified as malware, which then result in, because everything is like so connected, package goes down, advisory goes up. When we had to take down the advisory, we remove them when this happens, not withdraw them, because that would not be fair to the people impacted. But it does raise a couple concerns that I have overall about these kinds of feeds, especially in the day of AI, where a lot of people are probably subscribing to these and building models out of them, and then maybe making assumptions about usernames or email addresses or anything that's associated to these things. Like we see this overall with NPM. We have this CouchDB feed, which is gnarly, but you could think of it almost like a large feed that you could subscribe to. And a lot of the people that subscribe to it don't actually implement like unpublished properly. So nothing ever ends up being taken down. And so that always is a risk when you're kind of creating these feeds and following these feeds, that like you only get the signal of new things and there's no like withdraw capacity. And so I just kind of competing thoughts. This is awesome. I'd love to see how we could like connect it, but we also need to be really, really careful with these feeds, ensuring that we have like the appropriate means of withdrawing things, especially with all the AI models being built on top of this.
Yeah, that experience is really awesome, Miles, and we're really grateful for that. And that's, I think, why this group makes sense as a sort of natural coordinating point for efforts like this, so that we can kind of learn from those experiences, figure out best practices, be those in the actual publication itself, or like what goes into that data set initially, or in documentation, or in even just technically how we expose that. So I'm happy to piggyback on like GitHub security advisories, but if there's a data format we can make that's even maybe more like more specific, right? I think to some extent there are worries that come from shoving this into a vulnerability, format, which a lot of those were kind of intended for. I think the GHSA schema does a good job, but like it's not what it's for initially, right? Yeah. And so if we can just have a really like feed design, like tailor-made for this purpose, especially if we can get standardization across languages. I'm gonna stick my sort of former academic hat on. We see a lot of research that's repeated across ecosystems, or worse, never repeated across ecosystems, just because it's a bunch of additional work to check each additional language ecosystem. And so we don't know a lot of the research findings to what extent they do generalize. And so the more uniformity we can get, I think the better. But as you point out, Miles, it's really important to kind of make sure that the data gets used responsibly. And so again, I think that's something that we're in a position in this group to do.
And I just shared a link to our advisory DB specifically for malware, and a couple things that I'll call out there. One is our malware advisories are not the same as our normal advisories. So like, we're not trying to like shove malware into like the CVE format. We don't include, when you look at like the reviewed advisory, like count lists that are there, the malware advisories like don't show up. And in fact, on the default order, when you just go there, it doesn't show. You need to put in explicitly type malware. The reason for this is like, especially with something like NPM, where we have so much drive-by malware that we're taking down all the time, it really is just like, it would pollute everything. It's like, it's bad enough with all the DDoS attacks. We don't need to add malware to pollute things as well. So that's the way in which you can see it. And so that you could take a look, and then that was answering your question, Nusrat. And so internally, just like the way a malware takedown would look like for our team. So we use a thing called entitlements at GitHub for permissions. We actually made it available online. It's like a little Ruby app that uses metadata inside of the GitHub repo to manage permissions. And so we use entitlements to manage the permissions of our chat ops. And we have a chat ops channel specifically for malware removals. So any malware removal can be audited, and we can see who did it, what was taken down, and if there's problems, like it's all in there and auditable. Only a subset of our staff have access to those specific commands, even like a smaller subset than our overall support team. It's just the folks mainly from trust and safety, and a few other folks who have those permissions. When something is taken down, Nusrat mentioned a security holding package. So we remove the package in all the versions, we store that data, and we replace the package with a holding package that only has like a basic README. The intention is to just like not completely disrupt the supply chain with like an empty package or something that would blow up if the package didn't exist. Although if someone's relying on a version scheme, like is not perfect. And then we now have a pipeline that essentially creates an event when that happens that goes to our advisory database team with the information they need to automate the creation of an advisory in that malware advisory database.
Yeah, that's all really helpful color, Miles. Thanks. And it's likely that if there is an, or as this effort kind of gets off within the OpenSSF, we'll turn back to GitHub, because it sounds like you have a lot of experience. And again, our goal is not to like necessarily take over this where GitHub's doing a good job, but just sort of like act as a coordinating point to make sure we have access to data from various ecosystems in this format. And again, with the lessons learned from NPM, of course. Cool. So I think the real summary here is that while there is no update, it is something that at least Nusrat and Lori, and to a lesser extent me, are thinking about. Expect at some point kind of just a general proposal for what this group can do to help out. That's probably going to be pretty limited in scope to just getting help from the repository maintainers, though we, I guess, reserve the right to ask for funding from the TAC and the governing board of the OpenSSF. And they have indicated at least a theoretical willingness to help with issues along this lines with funding support. Though they said, we got to come with a very concrete ask. They're not just gonna write us a blank check there. So no real update other than it was discussed at the TAC call. There's folks are clamoring from across working groups. And so highly anticipated work, and I'm excited to kind of see where this is going. Any other questions, comments on this topic?
Sorry about that. One thing I wanted to brought up. So for NPM, I think we have some resources where they have been collecting NPM data historically for over a year, right? And our group also doing the same part. But in last couple of days, I have reached out to multiple package maintainer or manager to ask them like whether there is a way to collect historical data for other ecosystems. So what I have learned so far, they all want to have a structure or platform where they can host the malicious package data, but right now they don't have it. So in that case, what is the like chicken and egg problem? Is it something package registry should start collecting first, then the central repositories? Or yeah, that's something I was thinking, like how to go ahead from that.
Yeah, Joseph.
Hello, everyone. I can do some updates from RubyGem's perspective. For now, as mentioned, we don't really collect much details on like removed packages and stuff, but we are going to start really soon. We are in process of building new admin dashboard when these things are going to happen. And there will be also audits start next to our election. So we will know who did some, for example, removing the package and make a reason what has happened. So then we can share those data later on. So we are going to start collecting them maybe this month already.
Yeah, that's really awesome. And I am excited to hear you going ahead with that. I think it's our hope that, again, you're doing the hard work to like come up with the schema and figure out what needs to get audited. And to some extent, that's gonna have to be unique per ecosystem because everyone's got their own underlying data stores and data models and so on. But if we can also come up with common formats that's gonna be shared, I think it can save you all a little bit of work. So I don't want to stop you. I think RubyGem should definitely go on ahead. But once we have a few examples of that we can sort of generalize and hopefully make the amount of work you're having to do.
We are really flexible on this. We are really flexible. So we are going to start with some classic stuff to be stored. We can extend over the time to in line with the standards. So that's okay.
Great. Looking forward to hearing more about that.
Yeah, is there an example that he should follow for format?
I don't know if that was for me or for Joseph. On our end, not yet. We don't have examples. I think we could talk to see some of what like NPM is doing here. But Joseph, do you have design docs or anything you can share out, or is this just kind of getting built? Really okay, cool. We would love to see that once it's ready, but obviously do that at your own pace. All right, I think that just about covers that for now. Look forward to more concrete updates, I hope, in the future. And yeah, thanks again to all the folks who are actually building these things that we can learn from as we try to generalize. Can I turn it over to Trishang?
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to add something that to the previous point, which is that Datadog has open sourced this tool called GuardDog, and maybe I should send a link here. Let me see if I can find it. Kind of cute name, isn't it? GuardDog. Let me see if I can find it. There we go. Okay. So what this tool does is it's compiled a bunch of heuristics that we found tends to identify malicious packages, malicious Python packages. I think we're working on an NPM version of it. What I'm thinking we should do is help NPM and PyPI scan all of the packages and contribute GuardDog findings back to this shared data repository that you're all thinking of.
Yeah, so this opens a little bit of a can of worms, I would say. In general, the sort of like automated or semi-automated malware detection is tricky, I think, to get right. And so if I can toot my own horn for a little bit, not plugging this, let me see. This is a preprint of a paper that I'm going to drop in the chat. And it will appear in much prettier, much better edited form at the ICSE, the Conference on Software Engineering this year. And basically we said, let's take a look at a few Python malware detection tools and learn how well they really work. But we did this by talking to some of the folks involved in the Python sort of malware ecosystem. And how much we can generalize from that, I don't know, right? Not like NPM, as Miles was mentioning, has like a support team associated with it of paid folks, which is really awesome. PyPI has more or less Dustin, who unfortunately isn't around today, but and so PyPI has in the past experimented with automated malware detection, and basically what they found is that almost any non-zero false positive rate is something that they consider unacceptable, just because there are 20,000 plus packages, and I think the number's even gone up since I last checked, every week published to PyPI. So okay, so you have a 10th, 100th of a percent, that still results in like a non-trivial burden on maintainers if they are going to sort of review everyone, and they do prefer to err on the side of not avoiding false positives by kind of manually looking at things and so on. So I come down a little bit skeptical, not on the value of tools like GuardDog, but on the deployment in an automated fashion. That said, I think signals from tools like this could be extremely useful in sort of highlighting things to take a second look at, if that makes sense. So I don't want that to come across as like a me being against this, and I think it's awesome that Datadog is releasing this as open source. We ran into a problem with this paper where a lot of other companies have tools like this and don't open source them. So I'm excited actually to take a look at GuardDog at some point in the future. Sorry, Joseph.
I'm about to also mention we already use some tool in RubyGems. It's closed source. It's different.io. I can show. I think it was already mentioned a few times in this group. We'll be definitely interested, maybe to contributing some common patterns we see in RubyGems to that GuardDog to be able to also scan RubyGem packages. Super nice. And we use it, as Zach mentioned, currently in manual mode. So we are getting manual notifications. We manually evaluate the severity and then decide to perform next action on. So it's just sending our alerts, but not doing anything in automated way. And it works really well for now. There's just some kind of delay, like when anyone is around to be able to evaluate this one. So yeah, super thanks for sharing this, Trishak. I will take a look if there's anything we can contribute as well to maybe support RubyGems as well in the future on this tool. Maybe we can also then later use it to automate some stuff. And as I mentioned, we are building the new admin dashboard for RubyGems. So this is, I think, planned to incorporate, right? Send some notifications in there. And for now, manually evaluate it. I'm also really afraid to block proper packages. So we can do some manual effort first, and then maybe see, maybe like partially, right? You will see maybe some patterns we can rely on 100%, so we can automatically block. Some of them will be still manually evaluated.
Trishank, you have anything on that you want to add? Or
No, I think that's good to know. Thanks. This was very useful information. I agree. Yeah, drowning in false positive is no fun.
yeah. Anyways, so I think there is a lot of room for, again, if this group is going to start collecting shared data across ecosystems, I think signals from malware scanners in both directions, right? Both helping those scanners run more easily on lots of packages without having to write like a parser for every repository's feeds would be nice. And in the other direction, once those findings are there, storing them in a common format so that we can sort of pull signals across. And again, all of this we would want to review who gets access, right? Pretty carefully before we open it up to the entire world. Obviously, we're the OpenSSF, we're in favor of openness by default, but again, when it comes to malware stuff, always want to be a little bit careful there. But yeah, I think that could be another, again, useful function of like, let's collect package metadata in uniform formats. And again, there are a bunch of initiatives here, and I think this group is a great way to unify a lot of those. Cool. All right, anything else on that point before we skip to Trishank's next item? Going once, going twice. All right, cool, Trishank, back over to you.
Cool, thanks. Sorry, I came a bit unprepared, so forgive me. I'm gonna share my screen, and hopefully with enough waving of hands, you get what I'm trying to say. I think it's a very interesting topic for this group. So I got inspired a few weeks ago, New Year, I was bored, and I've had enough of reading about dependency confusion attacks, like enough, once and for all. Let's stop calling this supply chain attacks and try to fix this problem once and for all, right? One of those grandiose New Year ideas. So a dependency confusion attack happens when, so this is a real example of what happened to a Torch Triton. I think a lot of you are familiar with this already, but exactly why this happened around New Year. Around Christmas, what happened to Torch Triton is that they have their own nightly index, their own PyPI repository that has some of their packages. And what happened is that someone seems to have reserved the same name that didn't exist on PyPI, the public Python repository. So what happened when you use two of the repositories is that if pip, the package manager, is not careful about it, it would end up preferring the package from the public index, which you may not want because it's not actually authored or developed by the original authors, but rather someone who has reserved the name and is hosting malicious packages. In fact, this is what happened. It was actually malicious code. I forget what it did exactly, but it was malicious. So they had to clean all of these things up. That has been removed from their nightly index. They've also reserved the name on PyPI and so on. So does this make sense so far? Basically, the attack comes down to if you use a package manager and you use more than one repository, more than one server to try to get packages, if you're not careful about it, you could end up trusting the wrong repository by accident for a package you're looking for. The canonical example is when the original author wrote about dependency confusion is that if you have an internal package, for example, let's say you work at Meta, not picking on them in particular, but let's say you're working at Meta and your private packages, your private Python packages start with FB hyphen whatever, star, let's say. So all your private packages starts with FB star, FB hyphen whatever. Let's say utils, FB hyphen utils. An attacker who knows this could reserve the same package on same projects on PyPI, and if pip is not careful about it, would install the one from PyPI, not your private company server. So it's a problem, and a lot of companies fell for it. So my proposal for solving this, and I'm not saying this is the best one, but it was the idea of using something that we call the map file. It's an idea from Duff. We're not planning to use Tough here, but we're planning to use this idea from Tough. The idea is to map packages to their respective repositories. So here, for example, how we could have avoided the PyTorch situation is that we would say, look, if you're looking for any package that looks like it starts with Torch, anything that looks remotely like Torch, whatever, Torch Triton, Torch Utils, whatever, you would trust it only from the PyTorch repository. And more importantly, you would terminate the search. It's listed in priority of indices you should look for. So the first thing you would look for is in PyTorch if you're looking for Torch package. And you would, more importantly, here's the thing, here's the subtlety. You want to say that even if you don't find Torch Triton on PyTorch, you want to stop your search. You don't want to backtrack. You don't want to make the mistake of backtracking and look for it on PyPI just because it's not on your private server. So you might want that safety guarantee in some use cases, not all. Anyway, I think you get the idea. This is basically a nice way to segregate packages into different repositories so you don't run into this confusion. Anyway, I started this whole discussion, and the too long didn't read is that it's not that straightforward. I learned a lot of lessons, so this was nice. I learned a lot here, and I like to share these findings with you. Basically, what I've learned, and I'm gonna paste some links here. Yes, I've pasted the Python discussion in a pip issue. What I've learned so far are things like this. The first thing is that it's not the easiest thing in the world to change a package, and especially an open source package manager, for very good reasons. I'd say the inertia is high for very good reasons I won't get into. So sorry, let me there we go. So proposal.
If
so,
you talk,
sorry?
Trishank, I
Yeah.
can transcribe.
Ah, great. Okay, thanks. I appreciate it. So what are some things you can do here? One is do nothing, the status quo, which I think everyone would agree is like not great. The other extreme is to use something like the map file, but the complexity is high. You do have to change your package manager. People have to learn like this new thing, understand the semantics. It's not going to happen overnight. Basically, forget about it. Okay. So what's this second approach? Sorry. And actually, there's a subtlety here. That took a lot of argument back and forth to try to find out, but I'm glad that we all finally agree. It's tricky when you have something like the mapping file when you have multiple. Okay, let's say your package manager does dependency resolution, which almost all modern package managers do, and it backtracks. So basically, what happens is you have to explore different sets, different choices for packages, namely different versions, to see whether they're compatible with each other. And if you think about it, if you add mapping, if a project can come from multiple indices, you've increased the complexity of your dependency resolution here. So basically, you need to change your dependency resolver to consider choices of repositories, which adds more complexity. So there's that's something to keep in mind of. Okay. The third option, I would say, and Donald Stuft came up with it, if you look at a GitHub issue here, is simply erroring out. And Dan Lorang from ChainGuard had actually implemented a very simple prototype over the weekend to do this. It's quite simple to do. What you do is in pip, if it sees that, okay, so pip, the way it works right now, I had a lot of fun digging into the code. If you have multiple indices, multiple repositories, it treats all of them with equal priority. So if it comes from any one of them, it works. So now, to avoid the Torch Triton situation, what you can do is, if you see a project come from multiple indices, you just fail. You just error out and say, I refuse to handle this. This might lead to a dependency confusion attack. Yeah, so that's one thing that you could do to start with right now. And Donald Stuff has done a great job of, yeah, I'm going to link it here. This is the, where's the link? It's a long discussion, as you can see. So basically, the pip community seems to be going towards this. It's a layered approach. It's not any one thing that they're planning to do right now. And I can't say I fully understand it yet, but it's a layered approach. We're going to do this first, and then the second thing first, and then the third thing. So I highly recommend all of you to read it, because I suspect PyPI is not the only repository that's concerned about dependency confusion. NPM or Ruby Gems might be interested too. So I highly recommend that you all take a look at this and figure out, and maybe take a look at some of the lessons that we've learned here. I think this is a very useful discussion to have about what is the most practical way to start solving this problem in the real world. It's not something that you can just change overnight. And I'll stop talking here. Sorry, I think Joseph wants, yeah.
Yeah, go for it, Joseph.
Yeah, thanks. I think it will be best to show my screen to explain. Since in Ruby Gems, we already took some steps, already also some mentioned in your talk. Tushang, I think I can share my screen and actually do a quick demo how this works in Ruby Gems today. It probably address a lot of stuff already you are thinking about. So this is a gem file specifying. Can you read the file somehow? Possibly?
A little bigger would be great.
I will actually open it this way, and then I can do this, right?
Yeah, that works for me.
So this is gem file is like package JSON requirements.txt, right? Similar stuff for Ruby gems. We specify the top level source. This is the public repository we maintain, so rubygems.org. Then we specify individual dependencies. And also you can specify separated block of additional source, like secondary source. And you can specify within this block which dependencies must be coming from this block. This is private packages on GitHub, for example. And if you do this and let the bundle resolve your gem file, there are two sections, each per each source. So in my side, there's the one public one, really long one, and one shorter one for this private part only. And those dependencies needs to be coming only from this one. So if anyone will acclaim this name of a public gem, it will not be considered during resolvent as a candidate for this one, because it's coming from different source than explicitly you mentioned in gem file. Before, this is actually change which happened like a few months ago as a reaction to the dependency chain attacks. Before, it was common to make two top level sources. And then the problem was, as you mentioned, they had the same priority. So if I do this today, and try to do bundle, I will get a big warning. And on the top, just cancel it. So it printed out something unexpected. Or let's do it again. So if you do this, that's wrong. We are trying to keep it possible, to make it for easy migration, but it's explicitly mentioned, right? You have two global sources. You have no idea which one should be selected, and it may result into security risk of installing unexpected gems. So if you wrap it into the blocks, you are saying those gems are should be found only in this alternative source. The rest is actually ignored for this source, right? So that's sorry, that's how we tackle this in Ruby gems these days. And once this happened, I think this solves majority of the problems we were aware of. So in short, we are explicitly saying those dependencies belong to this source, and during resolution, we are not looking to any other source to find them. That's how we do for now.
That's awesome. That's really cool. I think I saw Jonathan's hand first.
So one of the things that pops into my head immediately is I know that a lot of corporate organizations set up like JFrog Artifactory or something like that, and they usually mirror a bunch of dependency, or they mirror a bunch of servers. So I haven't used a corporate mirror in a long time. In my experience, what my experience with the JFrog, for example, is that a lot of times people will set that one mirror up and mirror a lot of different repositories, and so that it's not usually the dependency resolver that has the problem. It's usually the mirror that has the problem, because the mirror is mirroring in such a way that is both referring to the public repositories and to internal components that are being served from that one URL. I'm not saying that this is something you can solve. I'm just saying that's been my experience as a corporate user, that's how people end up building and setting up their artifact resolution, and probably something that needs to get changed as well. But this seems like a good approach. Yeah. I'm gonna switch to my laptop. I also have I don't know if anybody's shown the Gradle way of doing this, but I'll stop for a second so that other people can jump in and chat.
Well, I think I see Trishant next. Trishant, you're muted.
Oops, sorry. There we go. Great, thanks. I'm glad we're having this discussion. Joseph, that looks quite close to the, I dare say it's mapping. So it's very interesting. Do you have like a documentation or a blog post that we could take a look at?
Definitely. I think there was some announcement for some release, first one including this. So I can after the meeting try to find a link and ping you on a Slack, Trishan.
Great, thanks. Appreciate it. Yeah, sorry, just to add to that, right, exactly. I just added to the notes. There's a few other solutions as well that came up. One was why not use lock files? I think Dustin actually brought this up, and Zach has noted some of the downsides there. The other one is, most notably, I would say one of the downsides is it's not going to help you when you are when you're first building the lock file itself, and you have multiple repositories. You still run into the priority problem, so that we have a bootstrapping problem. The second approach that came up quite a lot is, why not just use like a network proxy, like an index proxy that you can use to mediate to all your requests to the public service. There's a subtlety there about backtracking dependency resolution that I don't want to get into right now, but it's not going to work for that reason. I think Jonathan has a remark.
Yeah, so I just want to give a quick demo now that I'm on a PC of Gradle handles this. So Gradle traditionally
A little bigger.
Oh, all right, good call. Oh, nope, not that way. Oh, for the love of. There we go. Okay. So in Gradle build files, you'll see this like repositories block, repository dependencies on Google. You can also declare multiple repository blocks where you're depending on multiple different artifact servers. Your repositories block is independent of your dependencies block. The thing about the Java ecosystem is that Java ecosystem is very heavily ingrained in the Java ecosystem is a namespace, right? So they have group name version. So groups are usually reverse DNS paths or reverse DNS. So and you traditionally have had to own the DNS record to publish to Maven Central and be able to prove that you own the DNS record for that artifact or for that domain. And then filtering, it was implemented as an additional feature. It's Ivy, repository content filtering. So you can say for Maven, only include the group my company, or you can include by regular expression for this, or exclude, but for Maven Central, exclude by regular expression my.company. And then you can also say exclusive content. This repository will not be searched for artifacts, right? So Maven Central, and then exclusive content for repository filter only do this, right? So this will prevent Maven Central from being searched for this group at all, even if it's declared first. And then so yeah, you can also do release only, snapshot only, stuff like that. So if you're curious about this, I can drop the link into the chat and I don't know the doc up, but yeah.
Yeah, I think Trishant dropped it in the doc. So but yeah, that's quite interesting. Okay, so here's where I'm at with this question is, I think one very useful thing that we could do as this group would be to basically just say, rather than having each package manager / repository, because this is kind of a concern for both, solve this problem from scratch to start. I wonder if we could systematize this knowledge somehow. I think, you know, we could do a comparison and contrast how this works in a bunch of ecosystem pros and cons, and maybe even we'd feel strongly enough to come up with a recommendation. If you're able to do this from scratch, what would you want to do here? Including possibly Trishonk. I think the baby step that you highlighted is really nice, where it says, okay, like there's a nice heuristic that sure, it doesn't handle every edge case like exactly how you'd want, but like in cases where there's ambiguity, we can just freak out and try to stop that. I've learned better than to volunteer to write this myself, but I can just file an issue. But if anyone has interest in trying to pull that together, I can assign that out to you. I'm also open to other suggestions for things that we could do in this group to influence here and help solve this problem more generally.
I volunteer to help with that document since I started this whole mess and I want to see a resolution. So
awesome, thanks,
You
Trishonk.
didn't-
Cool.
You definitely did not start this mess. This mess
True,
predated you.
that was 2017, I think. I forget his name. Yeah, but
Yeah.
Sweet. And it would be great if you do that to follow up in the Slack channel to, because I'm sure plenty of folks would love to contribute, and anyone who's not here would be interested to hear about this as well. Cool. All right, that's very interesting. I think useful, thought-provoking discussion to have. Anything else on this, or have we solved it once and for all, or at least made a plan to solve it once and for all? Going once, going twice. Okay, cool. I don't see Mike Lieberman on this call. Was anyone, I unfortunately wasn't able to make it last week. Was anyone able to make the APAC meeting a couple weeks back who listened to the salsa distribution and discovery item and feels like they want to summarize that for us? Otherwise, we can wait until Mike can make it or he briefs someone.
I just filled in the links to the document, Zach. And also there was one additional topic quickly discussed about the proxying of the gems. I also, packages in general. I also left a link for one of the gem proxies, how they apply the same logic on a proxy level. So it works equally. So it's prefer the private over the public sources. There's a link in the document, so feel free to take a look or reach me on Slack if you would like to get more details on this.
Cool, awesome, thanks. Yeah, thanks for dropping that link in. And I think I will just make sure it should be in the calendar invite, but I can also make sure everyone in the chat has these links too. Okay, so then I'm gonna table this as didn't discuss because of insufficient Mike Lieberman. And see if we can't, I can try to make sure either he's here next time or I get a briefing from him and can present this on his behalf. One final point of administrivia. I don't know that there's a super formal process for this, but I am not listed currently as a maintainer of this working group. I would like to add myself. This has made things a little awkward when I go to the TAC and they're like, who are you? And I'm trying to present things on behalf of this group. I guess I just wanted to float that here before I like made any moves. I will go through the trouble of, I don't know, making a PR to the repo and getting approval from the existing maintainers. We don't have a super formal process for amending that, but I figure if we get consensus of everyone who's in charge, no one can fight that. But wanted to, if you are terribly offended by that, I wanted to give you some notice so you can, I don't know, start your smear campaigns. All right, then I am happy to wrap up a couple minutes early, not least of which because I am slightly underdressed for the weather. But thanks for showing up as usual. Fun discussion today. And then see you all in 2 or 4 weeks, depending on time zones, and in between now and then on Slack. Any other business before we leave? Okay, great. Have a great one, everyone.
Thanks. Ciao.
Bye, everyone.